Right, so I think we've gone live here. Just doing a refresh, and I'm going to post the link out, and I'll do a test as well. So test, might even hit a like on my test. There we go, I like myself. No, can't do that, so let's just go and close that one out. Edit, docs, chat. Right, back. So refresh. Okay, we're going to be looking at Pydantic today. Just something that I came across on Stack Overflow. I'm just going to get this posted out to, I'll do the share. So share, interestingly, no one actually really looks at the shares, or all of the likes seem to come from bots basically. But whatever, every now and again people join, so I've just done a share. This is a Pydantic tutorial, and right, so I've come across this post basically, which is this one on Stack Overflow, but actually this morning or yesterday I saw another post. So this one's about like this, it's about fast API, but actually it's using Pydantic here. And I saw another post on Pydantic. In fact, I saw 2 or 3 different like other YouTube videos on Pydantic, like why you should use it and why you shouldn't. And then I've seen this question. So kind of like finally I've gone along and I'll have a look at it, because if everyone's talking about it, what is it? And this is actually the website. I've never actually seen this website. I literally just pulled up the front page. So I've never clicked in any parts of this at all. So this is a first look at Pydantic. So like what does a user do with Pydantic? And let's have a look here, Pydantic. First, we build a data validation library that developers love. Next, we're building cloud services that developers will love too. Now, I've taken this code, and where is it? Over here. Kind of like copied and pasted it into my VS Code over here, and I'll Control plus it a couple of times to get rid of this sidebar because we don't need it. And I've commented out the fast API part because I just thought, you know what, I'll just keep in Pydantic. And I know kind of like what Pydantic, at least I've seen what it's for, which is, I've seen this thing here, which is this base model. That's kind of like the main bit that you tend to see on the YouTube tutorial with Pydantic. And what it actually does is it lets the user create, or it gives the user the ability to create a class that base user here that has variables, and each variable has got a type. So it is like a formal way of I guess type checking is probably the best way of, or not type checking, but a proper, like Python has type hints. So unlike structured languages where you have the type for sure, Python, like you just tell the user what type it is, but then you can check for types. So the normal thing that I can do is something like x equals 10. This is really rubbish version of it, but I could say that x is an integer, right, of type integer, and it's the value of 10. But when I actually come to run this, so you know, print x, we'll see this a lot in some of these tutorials and stuff, but if I come to run it, hit F5 over here just to run it, you know, what do we get back? Okay, gotta be careful about this. Email validator is not installed. Okay, run pip install Pydantic email. Let's just get rid of this comment because I don't even know. You know what? I'll kind of like ignore that for now. I'm gonna ignore this. I'm gonna ignore this message for now just to show what I was talking about with the types. But basically, if you've got X as a type in, you can print X like this, F5. I'll get back to the Pydantic thing. I don't even know what the error was, so that's an interesting one. But yeah, I get value of 10, but one thing that we'll see quite often, so we've type hinted, we've told the user that x is of type integer, but anyway, even if we didn't say that it was type integer, it's, if I hover over it here, it says literal type 10. So it kind of like knows that it's automatically inferred. The type is automatically inferred, but we've just said it's type integer anyway, just to be give extra clarification. Now, in other languages, the curly brace languages, C++ and so forth, you'd say something like int x, but you might say int x, or int x equals 10, so something like that. That's how it would look. So an x can only be of type integer. You can't change it, otherwise it conflict. But the dynamic languages, they let you change the types. You could have x as 10 here, and then you could have x below equal to hello, like this, right? And even though you've hinted and whatever, it's just now changed its type. So here it was an integer, and now it's just turned into a string. You could even type hint it, right, as a string. Like, I'm turning it into a string now. But the thing about this type hinting is it's just a hint. So here, this doesn't have to be 10, it could be hello, right? And the issue is it's not going to throw an error, right? So F5 to run it, it'll just print you hello, even though it should be an integer. Whereas in one of these strongly typed languages, it would throw a fit, because we've just said here it's an integer, and it shouldn't be an integer. It should be it should be an integer. You just put in a string. You've broken your code, right? But Python is dynamically, it's flexible. It lets you change. Fine. So what do we do about this? Because that could be problematic just before you print x, and you might do something like, I guess, if. Maybe is instance is one way of doing it. I can't remember how the is instance thing exactly works, but let's have a look. Is instance a tuple as an instance may be given. So let's have a look. X, comma. I'm presuming that might be int. I don't even know. Else print does not work, right? I'm just querying about I'm just having a look at so that's the object. I think the object just goes in class or tuple, yeah. So return whether an object is instance. I can't scroll and see any more help on it. Let's just do, I might actually go to this, which is over here, and then just go over here, and then just go over here and go Python. There we go, just to maybe get the usage of it. Okay, fine, yeah, it is like that. So 5 and int, that would be sufficient. So just going back then here, F5 to run it. There we go, it does not work, right? And then I guess if we put in a 10 here, it will do the little checking, and it will work. So, and the bit that I'm looking at is, right, what is it? Just down below where it says does not work and does work over here. So that's kind of like the parts I'm looking at, which is this bit here. Oh, it's not working. Okay. My drawing tool is not working, but that's cool, fine. Wonder if I can get it working. Ah, yeah, there we go. So, yeah, there we go. So that does not work there, which was when I had that as hello, and then afterwards it turned into the value of 10, which is fine because it did work, because it's of type integer. So we could do these types of things. We can kind of like do this checking ourselves, and that's kind of like what you have to do in the dynamically typed languages. Is you've kind of like, even with you've got the hints there, and you should adhere to the hints, but they're flexible. So JavaScript, Python, 2 examples of Node.js, they're examples, which is part of JavaScript, examples of that. Now, I see this piece of code here, and let's just get this back, which is this piece here and this piece here, which I'll have to figure out why that didn't work. But basically, this is quite clean, as in, we've now got this, and it's of type string, and this, but we've got this base user, and it inherits from base model. So this is our class basically. Now I'm like, okay, so like, what does this? First of all, I was like, well, Pydantic looks like it's accepted. It hasn't got like a squiggly underscore on it. I don't know why it didn't run. I need to figure that out. But it hasn't got a squiggly underscore under it. So I was like, I must have pip installed it. I must have pip install Pydantic, right? I must have done that at some point, presumably. Otherwise, it would say I can't find it. Like the linter would pick up and say couldn't find it. So I was like, I can't remember doing that because I've never really used it. But so I pulled up. I'm using Claude here, Claude AI, which is my latest version of all of the things, all of the GPT types of models to use. I'm using Claude AI here, but it's Pydantic a built-in model in Python? And no, Pydantic is not built-in module in Python. So that means that I must have pip installed it. So you would run pip install. In fact, you do a Python -m pip install to make sure you've installed it in the right place. So I must have done that. It's not part of the standard. It says it here. It's not part of the standard library. Standard library contains things like OS and system datetime and all of that. It looks quite complete. It's definitely asserting that. Maybe I could look at the Python inbuilt libraries, but it doesn't matter. Like it appears. I'll take it as face value that this is correct. So in summary, Pydantic is very useful, popular library, but it's not built in. Okay. And I was like, okay, fine. You know what? Provide me an example. So provide an example, a Pydantic example. And so it gives me this simple example here. And like, you got this base model, which is the same thing from Pydantic import base model, which is kind of like what's up here. Now it's got this email string. I might remove the email string just to see if I can get this working. But basically, like this is this example, and then you can sort of like do user, and then user ID, and then this is of type integer, and this is of type string, and it's kind of like done for you and so forth. So let me just at this point, I guess if I remove the email string, because the error message has something to do with email, so I'm just going to remove this now, right? And I don't know if this will run now. Hit F5, it might still throw an error. No, it worked that time, so email string was a thing that wasn't working. So I've got this import Pydantic from base model, and it seemed to at least have passed through there. And then, right, again, class user input, basic password as a string. Now, I don't know if this is worthwhile or not doing. This should also run through, it should be fine. Because it's checking the type. So I'm like, okay, we've got this over here. I'm glad it works at least, because this is all real time, so I've got no idea if it's going to work or not work. So here's a simple example demonstrating the Pydantic library, right? And I'm like, okay, that's great. It looks really useful, but I'm not a fan of like importing modules and so forth unless they kind of like do a lot for you. This one, I think it looks like it possibly does do stuff for you, so it looks like a thumbs up. Not all of the imported modules that I've used, that I've tested, I've given a thumbs up to. It's kind of like 75% of them are good and 25% of them kind of like get a thumbs down. The key things Pydantic provides, okay, the base model class to define data models. I think that's kind of like its key thing here. Type hints to enforce data types. ID must be int, name must be string, and so forth. So it does that. But I'm like, I can kind of like do that on my own. I don't need Pydantic to do it. What's it saving me? So, but it does give you a few bits and bobs, I guess, out of the box. So my first question is this, is how would the same code, so not the code that I had from the Stack Overflow question, but a very similar one, because this is a very similar one. In fact, actually, it looks nearly identical now, because once I've deleted that bit, I've got the name here, this bit here, full name, string, or none equals none. Again, I've discovered that I don't like this kind of syntax. The reason why is that really you should have just one type all the time. Just because you should know what your type is. So you're either none or you're string, but you're not like string or none, if that makes sense. So anyway, I've used this and I think I'm going to go off of it. Because you could go to town with, so I wonder if you could have a string or none or float, right? Or float, right? Like it's acceptable, you know, or bool, right? You know, there we go. I can nearly have every type. Well, you know, if I'm going to start doing that kind of thing, then I might as well have just, you know, not had anything. So anyway, we're divulging. So I asked a question, which is, you know, provide a Pydantic example. So we got an example. Where was I on that? And then I was like, well, how would the same code look or be constructed without using Pydantic? And this is the key, right? And then it's all like bludgeons this along, which is you have to create this class user, and then you define your class with initialization. I want to keep the standard Python as much as possible. I don't want to use these models where possible. But now this one starts blurting out, you know, you have to do the constructor with a self. Okay, it starts blurting things out that maybe, I don't know, it's a bit of a headache. So I can see why you might want to use that because you don't want it in it and so forth. This is way cleaner, right? If you can just use the base model, it's way cleaner. And it was one of these other data class as well. From data classes, import data class. Right, that's another one that I've got to go through. That one kind of like what it does do. These things here. Oops. Are this Pydantic and these data classes? It avoids the user having to do this big fat ugly def double underscore init double underscore self. The constructor. The constructor is really ugly in Python. I just don't. I hate the constructor in Python compared to like, you know, other languages like Node, where your constructor is a constructor. You know, I'll go through that as well. Like after I've done this, like I'll probably go through that. But if you've got this big fat ugly constructor, so that's one fat motivation straight away for using it. But and then here it breaks down this def validate, and then validate ID, and then def validate name. So you've got to validate the ID. So every type that you've got in here, you've now got to validate. So if you had like 5 types or 10 types, you'd have to have 5 of these validations or 10 of them. That's assuming that you wanted to validate one by one, which is probably in essence the right way to do it. It's kind of like validate one by one. But so I can see now why there's a big motivation, but then I'm like, well, maybe I can do the validation all in one. I didn't ask the question right next, which is why not just validate all the variables sequentially? So guess what the bot did? It went along and did it all sequentially. I didn't mean to do it sequentially. I meant to do it, export it as another module. But this is what you can do, which is, you know, this bit here effectively. Right, if not, is instance ID in. So there we go. And then that's your first validation. And then that's your second validation over here. And, you know, then I guess it's doing all of them or something. If sign up equals. You validated ID. You validated name. Oh yeah, and then you got so you got 3 validations here because you got 3 inputs. Right, so there we go. Like, you've got to do your validations like that. So we're seeing why. Like, this is now clunkier. So just remove them. And I'm like, okay, that's good. You know, it's, you know, this was a little bit uglier. This one sort of like cleaned it up a tiny bit, but still not good enough. And then all, you know, then all of your selves or whatever go in here. So what I actually meant to put was, why not just have one validation method that is called by the init? So, here's our constructor. So we're back to our constructor again, normal constructor. That's good because we're now back to normal Python. And then we have this validate function over here, which is def validate, and then if not is instances. Now, I'm going to say, I don't know 100% on this, but this piece of code here really is essentially all the stuff down in here in the base model. It's this base model over here, and potentially, this one for the next one. Like, effectively, some validation class. That's what Pydantic seems to be giving the user. So I think that's kind of like it. By the way, create a class in Node.js, a class with a constructor in Node. So let's just look at another language, just because I haven't used Node for a long time. Let's see, here's an example of a class and a constructor. Right. So the class in the Node.js class just looks cleaner, right? You got your class of user, and then you've got your constructor inside the class, but you don't have any of these big fat ugly double underscores everywhere that are magic methods. Just confusing to the user. It's horrible to have that double underscore. It's actually horrible to type more than anything else. It's kind of like def. I know that we get the autocomplete double underscore on some of them in it, right? Double underscore. You've got to do that. It's just ugly to type. Do I have a? I don't have the in it. Fortunately, most of the editors that you have will sort of like, you'll have something like this where you can create a user snippet, so that it's kind of like there, and you get the templates. You don't have to type in the double underscore in it and so forth. So you can construct a class like that, but still, it's ugly. Controls it. It's just ugly to look at because we got this one versus the JavaScript one, which is there's things I like about Python that are better, and then there's other things that are actually cleaner in other languages. Because you might say all of these curly braces and these semicolons, Python cleans them all up. Yeah, it does, but then it gives you this double underscore in front of its constructor, which doesn't come here. And surely the constructor here is much clearer. The entire class really is visually much clearer than the Python class. Whatever, we bypassed that. That was just a side note. So just getting back to it, I might actually use this in my class somewhere. It's sort of like, what would this look like without this Pydantic base model here? And because I guess I'd still have a class. Well, in fact, I am going to use it, class, and then this would be something like, I guess, base user number 2. Base user 2, assuming that's base user 1. And then here we would have our user name, and then self dot username is equal to username. Right, that's the typical way of doing it here. And there was one extra piece in this class, so let me go and retrieve that, which is over here in this bank, because I sort of like removed it. I needed to install something, which is, to do this checking of the email. This one is actually quite powerful, so this is sort of like quite useful. But let's just say that this is a string, right? So, one of the other things, I sort of like removed it from there. But email here was a string. That, I think, should actually run perfectly fine. It shouldn't require, I think the bit was the email string through some sort of error message, because email str, when I did that, it didn't like it. Right, we don't like things like this, because I want to do a pip install of Pydantic, and I don't want to have to do a pip install of other things and keep on having to do that and have my code break, and like it just gets annoying. But I guess, you know, if you want to get the benefits of it, that you would have to do it. Like, and it's not a pip install; it's a Python -m pip install. Nearly in all the operating systems, it's a Python -m pip install. I just don't like the pip install thing on its own, making it, because you might install to the wrong Python. So I can't use this without doing another pip install, and that means that, you know, with a pip, if I do a pip freeze, I should see all of my packages, and I'm just going to have like just loads of the damn things. Like, you can see how many I've got, right? Loads. You know, and there's already about 40 packages. You know, and then like just to get this email string one, you know, so I've got Pydantic. To get the email string one, I'd have to have something else in here, basically JKLMNOP. So, you know, yeah, Pydantic's down here. You know, I don't know what PyCares, PYC parser. Some of them might be Pygame. Well, okay, that's, you know, a big module in itself. But anyway, I'd need Pydantic, some email string, dash email string or something like that. I'd need another version of it, and I'm like, oh, I'm against that kind of thing. But anyway, let's reconstruct this class without having this email string in here if we didn't want to have it. But, you know, there is good reason to have it, but, you know, you could have str, and I might just live with that. You know, that's not good enough. But the email string is going to do a lot more checks, like, as you can imagine, because, you know, the typical email will be something like foo@bar.com, right? And, you know, we can do lots of checks to make sure that there's the @ sign, you know, make sure that there's something before it, make sure that there's at least one dot for a .com or a .co.uk or something. So like all of these variants for checking emails, whereas I'm imagining that I commented it out, or I removed it, email string, that this thing here is actually quite complete. So, you know, and in fact, maybe I'll ask that the question, what does Pydantic email string do, question mark. It should be in the context, because I've asked a lot of Pydantic questions further above, so it should be like apart from ask one plus question here. The Pydantic email string is a validator that checks if a string is a valid email address, some key points. It is used as a type annotation. Okay, again, this is the type hinting thing. Type annotation, type hinting. I think that's the same thing. Yeah, it checks if it contains a symbol @ sign, has a domain, and a TL and TLD suffixes. I presume that's the first and end bit. Overall structure matches an email pattern. The validation is done using regex. So the reality is, or in order to avoid this, so I don't want to have Pydantic email string. How can I do the same check without email string? Question mark. Right. And it should give me, I'm presuming it's going to give me back that, you know, the full check. Here is the way to validate. There we go. So we can do a validation. Oh, now I have to import regular expressions. But this module exists. So I can import RE here. And therefore I don't need email stream. Now again, maybe, I don't know if this is more complete or if it's just doing a regular expression. You know, is it, you know, leveraging one or the other? But let's just go back. We've got a username, we've got an email, which, you know, we'll call it, sorry, here, we need to have email, and then this one then becomes self.email equals email. By the way, from here, which is this data class, I think that if we do at data class and then something like class base user 3, I think that's how we use a data class, and we can then again avoid the inits. I think I don't know if we have to give them names or not. So, but that might be a cleaner way than using Pydantic base model, but whatever. Maybe I'll go and have a look at that. But let's continue. I guess something like username equals just so that this runs. I'm just going to hit F5 just to make sure that all of that is kind of like fine. Don't think I've got any error messages. Yeah, it's all gone through fine. Right, so self.email equals email, and then here it would be self. Well, I'm going to need over here a full underscore name. Full name. Right, so something like this. Now, so this is in my constructor. I haven't done any checking. So the first thing that I can do, and you know, lots of people like do this or whatever, is, you know, I know that this is, well, we've just said here it's a string, so I type into string, and this one here is a string. In fact, you know, we know that it's not completely a string, but it's something else. And then the full name here is a string. So, you know, now I've thrown in the type hints straight away. So when you sort of like go to this base, when you go to the init, you've now got this signature here, and it tells you string, string, and string, returning you back a none. So that's good. You know, you can do that. Now, that does sort of like have some kind of validation, I guess, is the part of it that's needed. And so I guess you'd have to validate each one, which is if it come down to the same thing, I guess. If username or if is instance, if it is instance, and then I guess self. Oops, one thing that you need a self keyword. It's not even a keyword, so I could use. I don't like. Sometimes I don't know why self is used. This is really like. There you go. If it's instance s, right, or s dot, and then email. Well, I know why you wouldn't use s, because that would be not clear enough in terms of like what does s mean, because s could stand for string or something else. So typically we do use self. You know, I'll go back to self, but because you nearly never, I've called it a keyword. It's not a keyword. You nearly never see self. You nearly never see anything else other than self. So, but anyway, if self dot username and then is a string, right? Is a string. That one's good. maybe we'd have to have a validate or something. So valid equals false, right? I'm just going to do that because the reason why is if valid equals false, then here we could, every time that it works, because I like to have truthy things, if that makes sense. I don't want to do a not is instance. So if this one is a string, then valid, well, actually I've got to be careful about that one. I want to check, I guess, if, let me just go back and see what the best way of doing, I just want to see what was used in here. I want to shorten this basically. I don't want to use a not is instance raise value error, but I guess you would raise a value error. Can I put that on one line? I guess so. I'm just trying to think of another way. You could make a list for each item. Self.valid equals. Self.valid.append. Right. And then we'll append that with a 1 or a true. Right. And then we can check the next one. I'm just wondering if this is cleaner or not, because then we can sort of like check our list all in one go and check all of our validations in one go. I'm just wondering if this, by the way, if anyone knows a cleaner way of doing this, like when you're watching this video back or whatever, then definitely like add that in. But self.email, then here again, so that's fine. So we check that one, we've checked that one, and we'll do this one. Now we've just got to check, I guess, if this could actually be a set. Because that would be faster. But we can't use the set method. How do we add items to a set? Right, add, there we go. Saved a little bit actually. Now, it's only going to have, because it's a set, it won't keep increasing, so a set in Python basically looks like this, which is I think Python set, basically, you know, hello world. If we put in another hello afterwards, it would reduce it back down to hello world, as in the set can only have one instance of anything. So I think this would be a cleaner way of doing it, but then we just have to check that if well, I guess one thing about the raising the errors is that you can raise the error at that point in time and say what each particular error is. But if false in set self dot set valid, then print one of the types failed. Now this is one way of doing it. We have another way over here, which is, you know, the if is not instance raise value error, which I could have done over, you know, the alternative way is this, is we'll take all of this over here, have that. It should only be one way in Python, but that's not true actually. But if not is instance this, then raise value error, right? Something like that. I think, can you put an error message? Inappropriate argument value. Okay. I wonder if you can put the comment. I can't remember exactly, but you know how you comment with a value error. I'll put over here, because I want to comment to the user, can I put a comment into the value error? Question mark. Right. Because we want to tell, yes, you can add comments inside, so it's going to give an example, hopefully. Yeah, email, invalid email format. So needs to be a string. You can see the advantages, I guess, of this one, you know, which is clearer. The only problem is Python is supposed to be 80 lines of code, 80 lines across in width, and we now have, you know, sort of like we've exceeded that, especially when you're using a class. This is the structure of how everything looks, but when you're using a class, you know, the first thing that you've got is 4 spaces of standard. Again, this is just standard Python. You've got the 4 spaces of standard indentation over here, and then you've got another 4 spaces over here, and then the minute that you're referencing something, well, that's automatically another 4 spaces. So that's 4, 8, and 12 spaces that you've used. And then the not and is instance must be there. So there's got to be, I think this is the smallest amount. So, you know, you've used a whole lot of stuff, basically, that this string here, if I wanted to keep it on one line, just doesn't fit. If I wanted to keep it on one line of less than 80 characters, just doesn't fit. We can see that it becomes problematic. So what I then have to, or what the user has to do, is go down here. Now, we're already at 4 spaces of indentation here, another 4 spaces over here, and another 4 spaces over here, which is 4, 8, 12 spaces of indentation. Okay, but we can get a decent string coming out of it. We don't need it to be any longer. I guess that's as good as it's going to get. So now you've got 2 options really, which is this version here. You know, check all the instances, put them into a set, and then do a check on the set, everything, just to check that it works. So I suppose that if you're doing classes a lot, or if your class has a, you know, more than a few things in here, And if your checks are standard checks, that Pydantic might be cleaner, because this is quite an ugly construct. I'll remove all of the things. Whereas this one's not too bad. Let me remove this. So like that. I guess this one is much clearer, if that makes sense. Plus, I've got the remodule. I don't know if the email string there, it deals with it. And if I even was going to do the checks for the remodule, I would then need to go here and email regex, right? That's potentially uglier than anything. But it is the regex, which is it's checking for the @ sign in the middle. I think it's checking for the dot here. Presumably, is that checking that there's no dot at the end? I think that's what that is checking for. Yeah, so that's kind of like, in the, this email. So in this validate, I'd actually, if I was going to do the validation properly, I'd need to actually do if and then self dot email, right? And basically yeah, if not rematch here. That's what I'd have to do. So I'd have to do if not re.match, right? Because that's what it's doing. And then self.email is matching this self.email to this, whatever we call, so our regular expression. So our email regex, which is this horrendous thing over here. So I need to define that somewhere. Now that's in the linter, that is proper ugly. But anyway, email regex then go on print it did not match. I don't like the not thing in the sense that, oops, I did pass and not print. Printed did not match, right? I always prefer to go with truthy things. So if this, then sort of like do it matches or pass, and then else it did not. So I always prefer this. If this one, I don't even have to do much, right? Else. I just think this is a bit clearer, personally. If this one, not even the dots, but pass, right? Okay, you're going to say now, you got an argument of not versus, because then you can select remove the line of code versus that. But it's always easier reading positives than like reading a negative, like a negative like turning into a double, a negative and then not do it. Or so I have to interpret what it is and then do the not of that. But I guess, this is the minimum that you could kind of like get away with. Well, so it's not the minimum, because you could do this, cut this one here and put this one here, right? I can no longer get that into one line. It'd be a bad email. There. That's fitting into one line of like Python code, but like again, kind of like you won't get away. If you want to have a proper comment, you're going to have to go on to this next line. So that's kind of like what it would have to. So like the minimalistic version of the checking, and we'd have to have that in our validate module somewhere, and we'd need to do that check, and then we'd do that, or we would again, we would select raise a value error and sort of print bad email structure. And it needs sort of like fizz at buzz.com. So you give it some kind of example like that. So I guess that's what that's Pydantic. That's sort of like my take on it, and the amount of effort that it does save, which all of this here, and actually this here actually too, in a way, because look at all of it. It's doing the construction for you. It's the constructing for you as well. So I've avoided this init, and I've avoided a lot of the validation, unless I want to do extra validation. And I don't even know if Pydantic copes with extra validation or not. But unless I want to, like, this is like, here it is, all in, it's like 4 lines of code with one module to import, and all of the stuff is done in the background. By the way, this is what Python's good at. It lets you do this a lot. If you understand or good with the modules, it lets you do this a lot. So like, you can have a one-liner, and sort of like, you just appreciate that it's all given, and you're standing on the shoulders of giants, and you can do it. But if you like to build everything yourself, then it's going to look like this. And it's kind of like, I couldn't get away with it, in another way. I'm going to have, like, this isn't the complete version of it, but this is the format of what you'd have to do. You'd have to do some sort of if is not instance, or a bunch of if is instances. I'd have to have done this structure, or I'd have had to have done 3 of these, one in each of those. So, one way or another, I couldn't get away. So I guess that's what it is. From that perspective, then, let's just go back and have a look at Pydantic, see what else there is. There's other YouTube tutorials and so forth, so yeah, go and have a look. But here we go, because I didn't even know that you could scroll down. But that's how little I've looked at this. So this is literally a first look. So you actually had the down arrow, funnily enough, at the bottom there. Click on it. There we go. We go down. Pydantic version 1. Okay, I'm not sure what version 2 is, but we'll have a look at that then. Today, Pydantic is the most widely used data validation library for Python. Okay. It's downloaded millions of times a day. Is it? Millions of times a day by thousands of developers. That kind of like doesn't make sense, because you're only going to pip install it, I guess. Well, you might pip install it multiple times, but not on the same day. And then, well, maybe you're pip installing it on loads of PCs or something like that. Maybe that's why. Like, one developer isn't going to download it 1,000 times on one PC at least, unless they were like responsible for like loads of PCs or something. So that's a little bit elaborate, but whatever. Pydantic's success stems from its great developer experience, simple to use even when doing complex things. Okay, so like, here's the base example. It made life very easy. Is ID like necessary in here? Like, why did ID come up as being a different color in the type hinting? So on that one here, just going back over here, there is no ID in this one. I just wonder if you get, paste that in there. No ID came up as this one. Interesting. Did I not have date time there? No. Date math. It's interesting. Look at all the date things. Date parser, date time. Okay, there we go. That was sort of like, oh, right, okay, I probably have to have a Pydantic date time. That's gonna, again, that's the sort of thing that annoys me. Important things, is it? I wonder if that would pass into Pydantic's thing there. It did. It was acceptable. Oh, it does have that actually from datetime, import datetime. Okay, fine, yes, and it's fine. Okay, so that's kind of like what it, what it does. Learn more from Pydantic, and then Pydantic version 2 will be a major upgrade to Pydantic. Okay, with validation and serialization logging implementation in Rust, version 2 is 5 to 50 times faster than version 1. Okay, I don't use Rust, but I think it's just implemented in Rust. All languages are faster than Python. It's a big bugbear about Python is that all languages are faster than it. But Python leverages off of them. So when you're doing, like arrays and stuff like that, you use NumPy, and the whole point of Python is that it leverages off of it. Like Python is an extension of C, really. It's you've got C and then you've got C++, which is like C with classes, but actually you've got C and then you've got Python, which is Python that is a clean, nice looking version of C. That's sort of like a non-statically typed version of C is Python. So I guess you could have called it C non-static or something like that, and that's Python. So C dynamic C, that would be Python. But you give up a lot of stuff for being dynamic and having that nice user flexibility. You have to give things up, and one thing you do is you give up speed, but you don't have to give up speed, because then you can do your implementations, all of your fast stuff in the faster language, and then everything else you do it in the convenient format, and that's the usefulness of Python. But anyway, Pydantic version 2 claims to be 5 to 50 times quicker. Either way, that's good speed gain, I guess. Hundreds of other fixes, improvements should make Pydantic the canonical way of working with real data in Python. Okay, Pydantic Inc. Learn more from the Pydantic v2 plan. Based on the same principles that we have in Pydantic, I've maintained that the creator of Pydantic has started a company to bring the same quality of developer experience to other domains. Right. Yeah, so one person, this guy here, has done quite a lot basically, for Pydantic, which is, I guess, addressing a lot of the type hinting that I had to do. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff here. I don't think I'm going to read through this. I'm going to read through a little bit, but not too much. Built-in JSON support. I'm just like scrolling through. This catches my eye. What else has formalized conversion table? Okay, so he's got things that are strict mode. Okay, headlines. Okay, he's got a lot of things here that are, if you're a user of it in a strong way, is going to be quite useful. In Pydantic version 2, Pydantic will move to match data classes. Thus, okay, that's interesting, because I was just talking about data classes before. Had a somewhat confused identified idea about required and nullable. Okay. Yeah, this like the required thing, I think is do you need to have that argue? So once you've said that you've got f1 here, this variable, which is of type string, does it need to be in there, or will it fail the type checking? And that's part of, when you're building your class on your own. I guess that's one of the advantages that you get when you build your class on your own, which is that you're sort of like in control of this. You're doing all of what Pydantic thinks. So now you can either build your class on your own, or you can understand Pydantic and use Pydantic's power. Basically, is the way of sort of viewing it. But what's going on here? Let's have a look. Another example: date time, base time validation error. There's going to be some things here like this and validator, where you've got this validator decorator, and it's obviously going to be doing some good sort of validation like decor, but you have to understand what it is. I'm going to say that this is sort of like you've got like a novice user, then you've got a like good user, and then you've got like an expert user, like people that create stuff. I think it's going to be at that level, because you're already doing classes, you're validating classes, you've got classes inheriting from other classes. You're already at a level where the project's big. This is a class instance, so it's much bigger at this point. And I think that's where the gain is going to be. So if you're doing like small projects, you're not going to see this gain. Whereas if you're doing something big, like this will just have a benefit. So yeah, that's kind of like it. Do I learn everything, and how validator works, or do I just build, my own validator? Is really the question that you ask. Like you don't want to rebuild the, the world, the wheel, because it's like reinvent the wheel. It's being invented. But at the same point in time, do I have to, if it took me that long to learn about it and then import it and then so forth, like could I just create one off the fly myself with a, in here, like with a snippet, like this, if this is a snippet here, there's plenty of snippets, like, here's my if snippet, there we go. I didn't have to sort of like, if I was given something else and I had to import a class for it, well, here's my if snippet and I can sort of like use it, throw this one out, and kind of use it as I want, as it was. So, swings and roundabouts there. Let's have a look here. More powerful aliases. Again, like, I don't know if I'm liking this, because it's getting to the point where this is becoming unreadable. It's good, but it's just becoming unreadable. So, you've got brackets all around, and then field aliases equals, and then you've got a list inside of a list, so a nested list. Yeah. When it gets to this level, I probably already, like, it's too complicated. I'm already building things. I think I might be building. I don't know. Everyone's got their own view on it. I might not do that unless I was in some sort of big project with other people. We actually have to make some changes to fast. We'll have to make changes to fast to fully leverage context. I guess you get things like fast API and stuff that come with it. But I suppose that's really it. Class method here. With a base model, you will have roughly the following signature. Okay. I presume this is what it's replacing. Is that what it's replacing? So base model takes in list of fields, class checks. Yeah, I guess it's doing this model validate, gives you this model validate JSON. Model is instance, so model done. Yeah, okay, fine. It's giving you all of these things. This is what it looks like, basically. I think this is the under the hood, effectively. So you would need, like, the user would need to be creating something similar to this, or you would just use base model, basically, which gives you all of this, which is kind of like, yeah, I suppose that's the use case. You're saving all of this clutter. I guess we're coming to the end of it. Is instance. Def model is instance, class data enable. Okay, I guess you'd have to do something like this. I guess that's pretty much it. We've come up to the end of Pydantic. So like, it's a tiny bit here. Implementation details. This is yet to be built, so these are nascent ideas which might change. Okay, but it's pretty damn good. A good piece of work. Would I personally use it? Possibly not. You know, I saw it in this Stack Overflow post. Someone else is trying to use it. You know, did it get an answer? No, I haven't actually answered it. I'm familiarised myself with Fast API. Currently, I'm struggling with the tutorial Fast API. I'm not able to mark a field of the output as not required in the generated docs as described, mentioned. Okay, you need to go to the generated docs. I'm not really going to do that because basically I know that this doesn't work and I don't want to pip install the Python -m pip install this email stream from Pydantic. Although, you know, I could, it's not for me. But basically, you know, Fast API and Pydantic, they're going to be, the combination of these two is going to be very concise, and it's going to give you I guess your Fast API thing, you know, quite nicely. So it'll save you a lot of lines of code. So that's basically it. I think I'll end the stream here. If anyone's got any comments, additions, or anything that you want to sort of like make at any point, like I'm really interested in the feedback. Where I've like potentially made an error or something, you know, some sort of typo or some sort of miscomment, point those out as well. And I guess also, if you like this, like, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, this live chat stream or whatever, if you do like it, then just like hit the like button. And also, if you don't like it, hit the like button and hit the follow and subscribe button anyway, because there'll be more of these, and some of them will or won't, you know, so like benefit you. And I think yeah, that's pretty much it. What else was I going to say? I was going to say one other thing, but I forgot. But yeah, that's basically it. Oh yeah, yeah. If there's any other ideas or anything else, this was the last bit I was going to say. If you've got any other ideas or of anything that are worth looking at, then definitely post those as ideas, because I always like look at new things that are coming out in Python. And actually, one of the things is Python 3.12, which is the next version. Just hit it in. What's new in Python 3.12, and there's only a couple of these things that are out there. But basically, you know, maybe do something on, you know, Python, what's new in Python. That would be something that's quite nice. But if there's other modules to look at, that would be interesting too, or anything else, you know, that's worthwhile of going into I like to do these things live. So if I crash and burn, I crash and burn live, as opposed to like pre-recordings where, you know, you should like edit it 1,000 times and you condense it out. This is, you know, the full version. But that's it. I think I'll sign off. So that was you know, our little look. That was a class on Pydantic and the Pydantic classes, and we'll leave it at that. And thanks for having a little watch. Look forward to the comments.